Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Lepakshi Khurana. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Monday, the 25th of February. Death toll crosses 100 in eastern India's spurious liquor case. Pakistani court rejects Nawaz Sharif's bail plea on medical grounds. Unsuspected plane hijacker shot dead by commandos in Bangladesh. And now for all the details. The death toll due to the consumption of illicit spurious liquor in India's northeastern Assam province has crossed over 120. More than 100 are still battling for their lives in various hospitals across the province.
The death toll due to the consumption of illicit spurious liquor in India's northeastern Assam province rose to more than 120 on Sunday, as more than 100 still battle for their lives in various hospitals. The deaths come less than 2 weeks after more than 100 people died from drinking tainted alcohol in India's northern Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh provinces. Many of those who drank the liquor in Assam were tea plantation workers who had just received their weekly wages, officials said.
Conservative treatment is going on. People are responding to this treatment. In these cases, conservative treatment is usually given because this antidote is not available in the market now, and it is also not will not be affected now because antidote will act only immediately if it is given. But people are coming late, so there is no role of antidote at present.
Mass deaths from drinking spurious liquor are common in India, where the poor often drink country-made liquor which is cheaper than regularized alcohol from licensed shops. Often methanol, an immensely toxic form of alcohol, is added to low-quality liquor as it is a cheap and quick way of upping the alcohol content.
In news from Pakistan, the Islamabad High Court on Monday rejected a petition seeking release of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif on bail on medical grounds. Sharif, who is serving a 7-year imprisonment in a corruption case, had been shifted to a hospital in Lahore for cardiac treatment on February 15th.
The Islamabad High Court on Monday dismissed a petition seeking the suspension of a 7-year sentence handed to former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the Al-Azizia corruption reference. The court announced a decision on Nawaz Sharif's plea seeking bail and suspension of the sentence on medical grounds. On February 28th, the High Court had reserved its decision on the petition after both sides concluded their arguments. The court stated that it is not a case pertaining to unusual circumstances and bail cannot be granted in light of the Supreme Court's previous decision, local media reports said. Sharif is currently admitted in Jinnah Hospital, where he was shifted from Kot Lakhpat jail on February 15th for cardiac treatment. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison on December 24th last year by an accountability court in the Al-Azizia corruption reference.
In news from Afghanistan, Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani on Sunday reiterated that the country's next presidential elections will be held on July 20th only as per the schedule. This comes after all commissioners from the 2 electoral commissions of Afghanistan were dismissed from the post, including the 2 chiefs, after an amendment in the electoral law.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on Sunday reiterated that the country's next presidential elections will be held as scheduled on July 20th. This comes after all commissioners from the 2 electoral commissions in the country were dismissed from their post earlier this month after Ghani signed off an amendment to the electoral law on February 12th. The July polls have already been delayed by 3 months, and Ghani's reaction came over calls by his critics for an interim government to oversee peace talks and a settlement of the ongoing conflict.
انتخابات فرمایش قانون اساسی است، خواسته ملت افغانستان است. انتخابات ریاست جمهوری با وقت و زمان ان شاء الله تعالی انجام میشه و هدایت ما به تمام دوایر دولتی است که از هر گونه مداخله ممکنه خودداری کنه.
The political parties and civil society institutions have been constantly saying that effective and professional candidates should be picked by government to lead the election commissions. Based on the amendment in electoral law, the presidential elections candidates will pick the new members of the Independent Election Commission and the Independent Electoral Complaints Commission.
Modern news from Afghanistan. A latest report by the United Nations has revealed that a record number of Afghan civilians were killed in 2018 due to stepped-up aerial attacks by the US-led forces and more suicide bombings. Ground engagements, mainly between pro-government forces and anti-government groups, remain the second leading cause of civilian casualties, the report states.
A record number of Afghan civilians were killed last year due to stepped-up aerial attacks by US-led forces and more suicide bombings, the United Nations said in a report on Sunday. The report from the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, or UNAMA, said the conflict in Afghanistan claimed 3,804 civilian lives that included 927 children, both all-time highs, leading to an 11% spike in civilian deaths versus 2017. Suicide attacks and aerial operations each caused the most civilian casualties ever recorded by UNAMA.
All parties need to take immediate and additional concrete steps to stop a further escalation in the number of civilians harmed and lives, livelihoods and communities destroyed. They must comply with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. The UN stands ready to intensify its work with all parties to assist them in taking the steps needed to halt the number of Afghan civilians killed and maimed from spiraling even further.
Ground engagements, mainly between pro-government forces and anti-government groups, remain the second leading cause of civilian casualties, the report states. The Afghan war, which started after the US forces led a campaign to overthrow the Taliban following the September 11, 2001 attacks on New York and Washington, has intensified despite peace talks gaining momentum.
Moving on to news from Bangladesh. Bangladeshi commandos on Sunday shot a passenger who tried to enter the cockpit of a Biman Bangladesh Airlines flight after waving a gun and threatening to blow up the plane. The suspected hijacker later died from the injuries suffered after the commandos stormed the plane at the international airport in Chittagong city.
Bangladeshi commandos on Sunday shot a passenger who tried to enter the cockpit of a Biman Bangladesh Airlines flight after waving a gun and threatening to blow up the plane, Airline and Aviation Authority officials said. The passenger, who had said he had a personal issue with his wife and told the pilot he wanted to speak to Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, died later from the injuries suffered after the commandos stormed the plane at Chittagong's Shah Amanat International Airport. Before the commandos moved in, all 142 passengers and most of the crew had been let off the aircraft unharmed, but one crew member was held hostage by the purported hijacker. According to aviation officials, the passenger stood up from his seat and tried to go to the cockpit. The members of the crew alerted the pilots about the problem and they asked air traffic control for an emergency landing. The authorities have started investigation into the matter, but the identity of the killed passenger is yet to be ascertained.
Exiled Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama recently concluded his first spiritual teaching session this year in India's northern Dharamshala town. People from across the world participated in the session to listen to the spiritual leader known for spreading the message of global peace.
Exiled Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, recently concluded his week-long teaching session in India's northern hill town of Dharamshala. Thousands of devotees from all parts of the country and abroad gathered in the hill town to listen to the 83-year-old monk who has been spreading the message of peace and harmony in the whole world. The event marked the end of the first teaching session of the year by the spiritual leader.
His Holiness is gathering people from all around the world because his wisdom is spreading all around the planet, and his love is spreading all around the planet also. So people are coming to get some of his wisdom and some of his love, and when they go back to their country, then they can also spread this love and this compassion to their family member, to the society, and in that way we can create a better world.
India is home to almost 100,000 Tibetans. The Dalai Lama has lived in India since fleeing a failed uprising against Chinese rule of his homeland in 1959. A government of exiled Tibetans and tens of thousands of refugees are also based in Dharamshala in India's northern Himachal Pradesh province.
Transgender community in India's eastern Kolkata city recently organized a fashion show to display their designs and creations. Models walked the ramp in Indian ethnic wear woven by the community and mesmerized the audience.
Transgender community in India's eastern Kolkata city recently organized a fashion show wherein they showed off their designs and creations. Models clad in Indian ethnic wear woven by the community itself walked the ramp and mesmerized the audience. The transgender community in India lives as a part of the sexual minority group, even though the Supreme Court in 2014 granted them equal rights and legal status under the law.
हम लोग ने सोचे थे जो टीजी लोग को कैसे एम्पावर में लाया जाए, तो कुछ प्रोग्राम हम लोग शुरू किए थे. इसमें एक टेलरिंग था, एक हम लोग का मेडिकल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव था, हम लोग का डांसिंग था, हम लोग का योगा थेरेपी. तो हम लोग बहुत कुछ इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं और उसमें से एक था जो टेलरिंग एंड ज्वेलरी मेकिंग और उसके साथ मेकअप. तो ये पूरा एक टीम हमारा बना था जो कम्युनिटी के अंदर इतना सब निखार है उसको थोड़ा और डिफाइन करना और थोड़ा ट्यून करना.
This time we have got the opportunity that the effort that we have made us what we think, because we think that fashion is what is the tagline of today's program, that fashion is not just of body, because our body is not what our mind says. It is two different criteria. So this category, this fashion unit of ATHB, it says that fashion is of mind, not of body.
Transgender people are often forced to live in the marginalized fringes of the society and are forced into sex work, begging or dancing at weddings to make a living. The transgenders were included in India's census survey of 2011 for the first time. According to official data, there are 490,000 transgender people in the country, a number that activists say is only a fraction of the real number.
The 12th edition of the Asia's largest military aviation exhibition, Aero India Show 2019, ended on Sunday in India's southern Bengaluru city with a grand display of aerobatics by the Indian Air Force. The 5-day event brought together several leading companies in the aviation sector from around the globe, all hoping to lure customers and clinch new deals.
The 12th edition of the Asia's largest military aviation exhibition, Aero India Show 2019, concluded on Sunday in India's southern Bengaluru city with a grand display of aerobatics by the Indian Air Force. On the final day of the Aero Show, a team of pilots from Britain flew Russia-made Yaks, performing breathtaking aerial stunts. Besides, Indian Army's utility helicopter Dhruv displayed role of helicopters in military operations. The 5-day event witnessed participation of hundreds of Indian and global aeronautical companies, including Airbus, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Dassault. Besides the aerial display of stunts, the show was also marred by accidents this year. A fire had destroyed 300 cars at the air show on Saturday, and 2 Indian Air Force planes had collided before the start of the Aero Show, resulting in the death of 1 pilot and leaving 2 injured.
Well, that's the way it was in South Asia this evening. Before we conclude, the top stories once again. Death toll crosses 100 in eastern India's spurious liquor case. Pakistani court rejects Nawaz Sharif's bail plea on medical grounds. Unsuspected plane hijacker shot dead by commandos in Bangladesh. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow.